Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. Kevin Feige was teasing Phase 4 and just how different it was going to look from all the other Marvel films that have come before it, so I'm going to explain what he said and then do some predictions. Some of it's pretty self-explanatory, some of it's kind of vague, but here we go. He said, I think you look at the comics as a guide. Although certain titles might get relaunched or rebooted, and when he says titles, he's talking about movies, the narrative exists on a never-ending continuum, which means that if they reboot one of the characters, like they recast one of the actors, then all the stories that previous actor told using that character, all the stuff that Jeremy Renner did will still exist in the continuum. They won't be rewriting that, even though they'll be going forward with a new Hawkeye. A good example of that would be if Marvel brought Kate Bishop into the cinematic universe. Kate Bishop is the person who takes the Hawkeye title from the Clint Barton Hawkeye. So it's like another character comes along, takes the mantle. In the comics, they both exist at the same time though. So you have like Team Hawkeye. You have Boy Hawkeye, Girl Hawkeye. So if you haven't ever read Hawkeye's comic book, in the last couple of years, it's actually been really good. But you get the idea. Like a more direct example would be like Sam Wilson, the Falcon, taking the mantle of Captain America in the comics. If they did something like that in the movies where someone else took the mantle of Captain America, it wouldn't erase all the Chris Evans Captain America stuff. This is actually pretty standard for comic book readers, but if you haven't read a comic book, it can seem kind of weird in the movies where it's like, hey, they rebooted the character. Does that mean that all this other stuff doesn't exist? Like when X-Men Days of Future Past changed the X-Men universe timeline. I feel like a lot of people who hadn't read comics before weren't really sure how that was going to change their universe, but most of you guys will get it. One of the most enduring characters, though, is Iron Man, and Robert Downey Jr. has committed to playing the character for forever. So no matter who gets replaced in the Avengers, there will always be the same Iron Man, which I kind of like because in like 10 years they can do Old Man Stark. He'll be the thing that links all of the Avengers stories across space and time, this one character. Then Kevin Feige continues by saying, I think there will be a finality of moments of Phase 3, as well as new beginnings that will mark a very different, a distinct different chapter in what will someday be a complete first saga made up of 3 phases. So what he's talking about is thinking of Marvel's Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3 as a kind of trilogy, so there'll be a beginning, a middle, and an end to that. In that bookend moment, we'll tip the hat to what Phase 4 and everything going forward is going to be. If you guessed that the Infinity Gauntlet will have something to do with that moment, then you're probably correct. Like Thanos will do something terrible to the universe, the Avengers will fix it in Infinity War Part 2, and in fixing it, they will change the universe forever that will introduce new villains, new challenges, new characters. Officially, as it stands right now, the first film in Phase 4 is supposed to be Inhumans, but supposedly that's going to be pushed. There are a couple other films we know are going to be happening during Phase 4 already. You have the Black Panther sequels, you have the Captain Marvel sequels, if they're going to be sequels to that. We haven't even seen that character appear yet. You have the third Guardians of the Galaxy movie, you have the Doctor Strange sequels, so you have all these new characters that they're introducing in Phase 3, they'll get their sequel movies during Phase 4, and then they'll decide whether or not they're going to introduce a new character, or they're going to reboot one of the existing characters. So from a very practical standpoint, just the characters are going to look very different because they will literally be different characters. Like the first 3 phases are dominated by the classic Avengers team. You have Thor, Captain America, Iron Man, Hulk, all those other characters. Phase 4 will probably double down on all the new ones that we're just starting to meet now. So it'll be different in that sense, but also I think we're going to see a transition into more mystical, cosmic story elements. Like look at this panel here. Thanos versus Mephisto. If someone were to ask you if that was going to be in one of the movies, you would laugh at them. Like, they haven't even gotten close to magic. We're not even going to see Doctor Strange till later this year. And the big villain of that does not look like Mephisto. So if it's going to take the weirdest, most mystical character years and years to get to someone like Mephisto, to get to like a god, then how long is it going to take for the big Avengers films to get there? That's what I think Phase 4 is going to get into. They're going to be a little bolder with their story and their character choices when it comes to villains and supporting characters. Think about what the original Iron Man movie looked like, and then think about what Guardians of the Galaxy looked like. So much weirder. I think Phase 4 is just going to be a step up the weird scale, just like Guardians of the Galaxy was a big step up the weird scale. So one of my first big predictions is that during Phase 4, we will see a supernatural villain on the level of Mephisto. Now he's just one of the biggest examples because he's a Doctor Strange villain, and they've already announced the Doctor Strange movie. There are a lot of other characters they can do. You have a character like Eternity, one of the great cosmic powers of the Marvel Universe. You have the idea of the multiverse. The Marvel movies haven't even touched on that yet. So I think we'll see multiverse, I think we'll see more cosmic villains, but they're going to push into that relatively carefully. They'll still be very personal stories, even though they'll get very weird. Guardians of the Galaxy is just a really good example of that. Something that went really weird, but was still a very personal story. We are Groot, despite the fact that it was a talking tree and a talking raccoon. My other big prediction is that Captain Marvel is going to be one of the leaders of the new Avengers in Phase 4 going forward. Now, a lot of that will depend on how successful that franchise is, because if the movie doesn't do well enough, then they won't do sequels. But I think Marvel has had a track record that we can say, even if it's not the biggest movie that they ever have, it'll still be really big. Like Ant-Man was a risk for them, and it did wonderfully. So that's why they moved up Ant-Man and the Wasp in the schedule. Like originally, they didn't have an Ant-Man sequel during Phase 3, and they do now. So I think it's going to be the same situation with Captain Marvel. She'll come along and she'll be so powerful, but unlike Vision, she will be fully human, so she'll be a little bit easier for audiences to connect with. So if she doesn't outright replace Captain America as leader of the Avengers, I think she'll be the strong number 2. Because I feel like what they could do with the Captain America character to keep him around, but change the way that he works, change the dynamic that he has with the characters, is turn him into more of a Nick Fury type character, which is kind of what the comics have done. But the movies might play with the way that happens because it is going to be a long time before Chris Evans looks like old Captain America without a lot of CG. But here's my big question for you guys. What do you feel like they're going to do with some of these big Avengers characters in Phase 4 going forward? Not the new characters, but the old ones. So they have to find a way to put a new Avengers team together while still using the classic characters in some supporting way. Like I feel like the easy pitch with Thor would be to turn him into the Odin character. Like Odin dies in the Marvel Universe, Thor takes his place, so he can still be in the movies, but you have a good explanation for why he isn't around all the time, and when he does show up, he has the Thor Force, so he also gets to become one of the most powerful beings in the Marvel Universe. So what's going to happen this week is there's a whole bunch more Captain America stuff happening, The Flash is back, and Game of Thrones is premiering, so be sure to subscribe to get all those videos. There's another Suicide Squad, Justice League video that I'm working on, a whole bunch of really cool comic book stuff happening this week. While you guys wait for my next video to post, you can click here to watch The Winter Soldier kick the shit out of the Avengers, and you can click here to learn all about the Spider-Man Homecoming movie. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Let's high five. I'll see you guys tonight.